He's here tonight to explore some of his biggest cases, from international drug busts to the Russian and Italian mobs, to biker gangs and contract killers, to corrupt unions and SWAT work. Michael infiltrated groups at home and abroad, assembled teams to create the myths he lived, concocted fake businesses, coordinated busts, and helped carry out arrests. Get the ultimate insider's account of the FBI for Michael, who has been recognized at the highest levels for his undercover assignments. And FYI, Sylvester Stallone's Balboa Productions recently acquired the film rights to this book. So all 50 of us or so, let's give a big round of applause for Michael.
Thank you very much. I tend to wander, so if I start walking up the aisles, I'm not senile. I'll come back eventually. I want to thank Robert for inviting me here. I don't think I've ever been to Tewksbury. I'm from Groveland, the Haverhill area. I think Tewksbury, though. I do follow high school football. I think you guys are in the Super Bowl, correct? Congratulations. All right, I'm going to tell another quick FBI story that made me think of it as I saw you sitting here. When I was assigned to Philadelphia Division, one of my jobs at one point was to execute arrest warrants, fugitive warrants. So people who had warrants for them, they would hide and we'd go look for them, and sometimes we found them and sometimes we didn't. But we came up with an idea one time, a long time ago, that we would send out notices in the mail that the fugitive had won a TV, all right? And they had to come to a certain location, and there was seating just like this, and we probably got 100 of them to show up. And behind the wall, there was about 200 cops. So after we got as many of them in the room as we could, we unfortunately told them we weren't selling TVs, we were the FBI, and we were arresting them. And everybody understood they were okay with it, except one guy who was adamant he wanted his television. He wanted the television. We told him we were going to give him a television, and he wanted a television. So that's what memories come back when I look at this. Not that I'm suggesting any of you look like you have warrants. All right? A couple.
We do want our book.
I'm sorry?
We do want our book.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're not selling TVs.
We did. So what I'm going to do, let me start out with a little bit of an introduction. Ghost, my 30 years as an FBI undercover agent. Okay, I wrote this book, all right? I wrote it for 4 people. I never intended for anybody other than my wife and my 3 children to see this, all right? Things changed, obviously. But that's who I wrote it for. And people say to me a lot, you were an undercover agent for a long time, why would you write a book? And again, I just told you why I wrote the book. I wrote it for my wife and my 3 kids. My kids are grown, obviously, but my children would tell stories at Christmas time and as they grew up, and they said, we really never understood what Dad did for work. He worked funny hours, the phone would ring and he'd have to leave, and sometimes he was gone for weeks and months at a time, and they really didn't understand it. And when they were little, my middle son tells a story. He was home sick from school one day, and the doorbell rang, and Dad was asleep, and I didn't even know that he was home. And I went down to answer the door, and I had a gun hidden behind my leg. And my son to this day doesn't understand why I greeted the UPS driver with a gun behind my leg. And then my kids also remember, which I forgot, I would work very unusual hours. When you work undercover, you do not work a 9-to-5 job, obviously. So my kids would find me in bed, when they came home from school, or just different hours. Every day was different. And my children got in the habit, when they had to wake me up, they would have to wake me up using a broom handle to poke me, because I sometimes would leap out of my sleep to grab somebody. And again, it's funny, we chuckle, but just think if you're a little kid and you're waking your dad up with a broom handle, that, I don't think a lot of kids had that issue. And then another story, one of my wife was insistent that I couldn't do work in front of the children. I had to go in the basement when I had to do something FBI related. So I'd be down in the basement with a tape recorder talking to bad guys, and my kids would come in to use the PlayStation or what have you, and they would see their dad whispering on a tape recorder. And again, it didn't make any sense. So these were like family stories that took place over the years, and I finally said towards the end of my career, number one, I wanted to thank my wife, okay? Do you know why I'm a good undercover agent? Anybody? I'm sorry?
No one knew you were undercover. No one knew you were undercover.
No, it's because my wife thinks we've been happily married for 35 years. Okay? Again, joking, but I really wrote this to thank my wife because she basically raised our 3 children. I was working and gone so often, and she had to run the ship. So it was to thank my wife, and it was explained to my children, and then it got some commercial recognition. That's another story, a long story. So I have a second reason for doing it. Number one, I want you to understand this. For 30 years, I kept my mouth shut. I never spoke about anything. My wife and my children literally didn't know what I did when I went to work. Okay, I was a police officer before I was an FBI agent. And when I was a police officer, I had been sent into a bar one night on a disturbance call, and I got jumped in the bar, and I got, my shoulder was separated, and I got 2 bad black eyes. So I went home that night. I was a young police officer, and my wife, we had just had our first child. And I went home, walked in with 2 black eyes and a separated shoulder, and my wife started yelling at me. Right? Now, excuse my language, but I just got my ass kicked, and my wife's yelling at me because I come home, beat up. So we decided at that point, and again, I hadn't even joined the FBI at that point. We decided at that point that what I did at work stayed at work, and I didn't bring any of that home. And that's something that we continued throughout the years. So when I wrote this book, I gave it to my family about 3 or 4 Christmases ago. I surprised them because they would see me sitting at the kitchen table. This is the way I use a computer, like most of you in this room, I bet. They saw me tapping away, and I wrote this, and I gave it to them at Christmas, and they read it literally from front to back that very day. And even my wife had no idea what had happened for the past 30 years. So that's a segue into why do I go commercial? Why do I sell this book? Why does Sylvester Stallone purchase the film rights? What I do now, in addition to my family, taking care of my family, I also want to speak for other undercover agents who are currently doing this. Whether you know it or not, you have FBI, DEA, ATF, state police, Tewksbury, I don't know about Tewksbury, but Boston police, Mass State Police. You have police officers and federal agents out doing this stuff as we speak. They don't want any recognition. They don't need any recognition, but they do want, I want you to understand that there are people out doing this as we speak. So when you hear some of the stories in the book, that I took place with me over the past 30 years, this stuff goes on as we speak, obviously. All right? I was never in the military. My 2 sons both served in the military. I have the highest degree of respect for our military and our military members. I think it's the greatest calling you can have. I think law enforcement is a close second. So if I can speak now as a retired agent on behalf of current agents who do this for a living, I just want people to recognize you do have law enforcement out there doing this technique as we speak, and basically locking up bad guys. All right? I joined, you'll soon see I'm also not a professional speaker. I was a police officer in the early 1980s. Okay, I worked as a police officer both in Florida and Vermont for about 5 years. And one day I went to, there was a bank robbery, and I responded to a bank robbery, and Jurisdiction-wise, the FBI federally also responds to bank robberies. So we would interact with the FBI agents, and I didn't know it, but one of the FBI agents who was responding to the same bank robbery was the local recruiter who tries to hire people away from police departments. And he asked me if I had an interest in the FBI, and I really didn't. I loved being a cop. My dad was a cop, my grandfather was a cop, and now my son is a cop. All right, so you got 4 generations of doing the same thing. I didn't even know you had a choice growing up. All right, really, if you're Irish and Catholic and live near Boston, you know, that's pretty much where you go. Or either that, or you join the other side. I'm not going to get into that one. All right, but again, I knew I was going to be a cop literally from the time I was a kid. All right, I really didn't know that I had other alternatives, nor did I want. So I grew up in the Haverhill area. I played a little sports. I was lucky enough to get a college scholarship to play baseball in Florida. All right, so at age 17, I left Massachusetts to become the center fielder for the Boston Red Sox. All right, didn't work out. All right, I thought I was good until I went to Florida. All right, I don't know if any of you have ever seen high school baseball in Florida, college baseball. They're a lot better than we are, all right? So I had to do something. My father died when I was 19 years old. I was away at college. I came back to bury my dad, and anybody here in law enforcement? Any cops here? Okay, all right. You hear about the thin blue line or the blue line. When you're a cop, you have an extended family. Not only do you have your regular real family, you have your police family. Because when something happens to a cop, other cops step up, all right? You've seen police funerals, you've seen demonstrations of that. So when my dad died, I was 19 years old. I didn't know what I was gonna do. I thought I was gonna play baseball. That didn't work out, like I said. So when I came home to bury my dad, some of his co-workers, other police officers, kind of took me under their wing, and we ended up arranging an internship. So during that winter, my father died during the fall, but that winter my school had a 6-week internship program where you could basically go and learn a trade or see what you wanted to do. And the police department was kind enough to take me on and kind of take me around and show me stuff. So I would sit inside a cruiser and I would answer calls. I couldn't get out at first. You know, I don't know if you know it, you can't open the back door of a police car from the inside. So I would sit there and watch them, and I was spellbound. I just was fascinated by the job. All right, and I know we live in an era where there's some controversy concerning police. You may or may not agree with me. I respectfully tell you that 98% of police officers do a phenomenal job. Okay, it's a tough, tough job. And it kind of irks me to a little degree that people who have never walked a mile in their shoes comment on what the police do. Until you've been in an alley by yourself, or until you've had to pull somebody out of a car that may or may not have a gun, that's not an easy thing to do. So again, I understand we live in a society, a free society, and people are welcome to express their views, but I'm telling you from personal experience, 98% of cops do the right thing. All right, so I wanted to be a cop. I became a cop, and then that divine intervention with the FBI happened where I bumped into that recruiter. He said to me, you know, have you thought about joining the FBI? And I said, no, I'm happy. I was a street cop. You know, I loved it. He said, well, here's the application and here's the pay scale. All right, so when he showed me the pay scale, it was double what I was making getting beat up in bars. All right, so I put it in an application, never thought I'd get selected, and lo and behold, you know, about a year later, I get a letter in the mail saying, you know, you've been appointed an FBI special agent. So there was no grand plan, let me tell you. I didn't plan a lot of this stuff. I didn't plan going to Florida to play baseball. This stuff just kind of happened. I joined the FBI, and let me stop there because now we're getting into the book. What am I doing now? Okay, I spent 35 years in law enforcement. What am I doing now? right? Now I have an easy job. I am a consultant and technical advisor to Hollywood. All right? So when they make movies and they make TV shows, they pay people like me crazy money to do the same things I was doing for 35 years. All right? Equalizer 2 was a recent movie, Denzel Washington and Pedro Pascal. It was filmed in Boston last year. I was the law enforcement consultant on that, and I had to teach Denzel Washington how to differentiate between a suicide and a homicide. Okay? And it's silly, but when you see TV or see movies, they never really get the law enforcement piece right, but at least they're trying. You know, they really do try to get it as close to possible, and that's my job to say, this is crazy, this would never happen, etc.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second because we have over 50 people?
Yep.
We are showing The Equalizer 2 this Friday night at 7 o'clock. True story, I did not know it was going to say that.
And, all right, so when you watch it, you have to stay to the very end. Under consultants, you'll see my name. Okay? And then the other thing I'm doing, because I can't go do police work anymore, is I'm writing another series. I'm writing a fictional FBI series. So you're going to see this coming out, hopefully in the future. But I want to share with you something that this went out on there's a website called Criminal Element, and it focuses on crime-related stories. And they asked me to do a piece, and it was called Writing FBI Thrillers versus Real-Life FBI Experiences. And I'm just going to read you one paragraph to kind of tell you how warped my mind is. All right? The biggest difference between my previous real FBI life working undercover and my post-career writing FBI fictional thrillers is simple. I can't get shot or stabbed sitting at my kitchen table pecking away at computer keystrokes. Chuckle if you will, but it's the honest truth. After 30 plus years of sticking my head in the lion's mouth on almost a daily basis, waiting for the massive jaws to clamp down, that one potential bad day is over forever. It is a huge relief, but at the same time, it's still difficult to accept that these incredible FBI challenges will never be available again, and that chapter of my life is closed forever. I'll do the next best thing now. I'll write about that captivating life. So again, I'm retired, but I'm working on TV and movies. Stallone has purchased this film, the film rights to this book. I have to go out there the first week of January and sit down with the screenwriters and start putting that together. All right? People get, like this young lady over here, get excited about hearing there's a movie or TV show. And I don't know any of you, but I'm telling you, that really doesn't matter to me. This was my life. This was the best thing I'll ever do. So anything that happens beyond this is gravy. It's just funny because I tell people now that I'm in Hollywood and I go out there on a frequent, and they actually paid to send me out there, which is even better. Every time I come home, I want to do two things. I want to take a shower and wipe off the grime and the filth, and I want to check my wallet to make sure I still have my wallet after that. It's a different world. I've spent 35 years in the police world, and now I'm working in Hollywood. It's two different worlds. But this is what got me there. This is what started. So I'm going to take you through this a little bit and explain what's inside, and hopefully some of you may have taken a peek at it yet. If you haven't, you're welcome to take a look. If you do read it and you do like it, I have one request, because my publisher makes me say this at every event. We would encourage you to put any reviews on Amazon for us. That's how the book gets publicized. So anybody who wants to and cares to, you can put an Amazon review on. What's the book about? The book's about, like I said, the book was meant for my family. The book is about my 30 plus years, and it's a lot of good days and a couple of bad days. And what do I mean by that? On the good side is you'll read about some of these cases that I was involved in, and I always say this so that everyone understands, this is my story and the things that I did. Nothing in the FBI and nothing in law enforcement gets done by one individual. It is more of a team concept than any professional sporting team you'll ever see. All right? When I go do my thing, when I'm doing my undercover thing, I have literally 5, 10, 15 agents supporting me in different capacities. All right? That was my thing. That was my lane. But you have a case agent, you have surveillance agents, you have support personnel, you have management. It's a team effort to do this. So when you hear this, I hate using the word I can only obviously speak of my experiences, but any case that was done in here was done by many, many FBI agents. All right, so this isn't a one-man show, and same thing with TV and Hollywood. There's always one hero, not in the real FBI, okay? It just doesn't happen. So when I talk about good days and bad days, let's talk about the bad days first, okay? In 31 plus years of FBI work, I loved getting up every day and going to work. I don't know what any of you do for a living, but if you get up and hate your job, I feel bad for you, because every day I got up, including the last day of FBI life, I loved going to work. Okay, I'm going to read you though, I'm going to read you the opening chapter. We're going to skip around a little bit, but here's one day that didn't go so well, and you'll understand what happened in a minute. All right, we're going to go back in time a little bit. On April 10th, 1994, started no differently than dozens of days before it. My internal clock roused me before dawn in the bedroom of our modest 3-bedroom home in Swedesboro, New Jersey, and my brain immediately started reminding me of things I had accomplished that day at work. Evidence tapes to review, transcripts of phone surveillance logs. The life of an FBI special agent assigned to a drug squad was always busy with cases to investigate, paperwork to fill out, and trials to prepare for. Today wasn't going to be any different, or so I assumed. What stood out that morning as I lay in bed under the queen-size comforter next to my beautiful wife, Samantha, was the fact that at this point in my young career as an FBI agent and father, my life seemed damn near perfect. Professionally, things couldn't have gone better if I'd written the script myself. I had what I considered to be the best job in the world, protecting Americans and our way of life from those who would do us harm. I'd served as an FBI special agent for 7 years, and as a uniformed policeman for several years before that. During my first undercover operation, my dedicated colleagues and I spent 2 years penetrating an international drug smuggling operation in Pakistan, which ended on the night of October 15th, 1992, when we seized 46 kilograms of high-grade Pakistani heroin valued at $180 million. It was the largest heroin seizure ever in Philadelphia history, and still ranks as one of the top 10 heroin seizures of all time. It had been an enormous coup, and the kicker was that we obtained the heroin without paying 1 cent of US taxpayer dollar. That's right, we had convinced the bad guys to front us the drugs. In other words, the bad guys expected us to pay them back, which we did in a sense, but not with money, with arrest halfway around the world in Pakistan. In the blink of an eye, I'd gone from an unproven new FBI agent to golden boy. High-level management types who didn't know my name or those of my colleagues before were now heaping praise and awards on us. A year and a half later, as the case moved to trial, we still couldn't do any wrong. In terms of my personal life, I had the luck and good sense to marry an incredible woman who was strong, kind, and who shared the same blue-collar values that I had. Work hard, take care of your family and loved ones, create a better life and a wide range of opportunities for your children. When I kissed Sam and slipped out, now see, I wrote this book with a co-author, so all the good stuff is mine and all the sappy stuff is his, all right? This is when I kissed my wife. I never kissed my wife goodbye in the morning, but I had total confidence that while I went to play cops and robbers in the big city of Philadelphia, she would attend to the needs of our 3 children with boundless energy, spirit, and love. With the lights off, I padded down the hallway in bare feet to check in on them. First, our two sons, Russell and Michael, ages 8 and 6. Their small bedroom formed a picture of everyday American life Norman Rockwell might have painted. Beds pressed together and sleeping so that their heads were inches apart, baseball gloves and other sports gear on the floor, a half-finished Lego construction set, tilting in the corner, shelves crammed with plastic guns, dirty clothes, coloring books, and Ninja Turtle figurines. Around the corner, I peeked in the little bedroom of our 3-year-old bundle of joy, Paige. Her fat cherub cheeks magically taking in and exhaling little breaths of air, a soft black and white blanket tossed haphazardly across her chubby legs. Was it my imagination, or did she wink at me when I gave her a quick peck on the cheek and brushed her golden curls away from her eyes? Silently, I moved to our tiny, cold bedroom and slipped on my gym clothes, running gear and Everlast boxing t-shirt at the sleeves to show off my guns, all right? FBI American Eagle backpack in hand, I crept downstairs, collecting my car keys, and past the dark shadows of the wooden rocker in front of the TV, the expensive new couch we would be paying off forever, and the toys on the floor. It may have struck some people as suburban chaos, but I wouldn't have changed a thing. All right, the point here is I'm trying to bring the reader in to my life at that point. On this day, April 10, 1994, my life was almost perfect, okay? And by the end of the day, it was a disaster. All right, and we'll skip ahead a little bit. So I drive into work, I exchange greetings with my colleagues. There's some humorous parts here. You'll have to buy the book to read them. But anyway, as this day goes on, we get to the point where, seeing that it was close to lunchtime, I headed up to the evidence room vault, which occupied more than half of the entire 8th floor. Since seized in October '92, the 46 kilograms sat among boxes of other FBI evidence, including seized drugs, guns, knives, suitcases, computers, backpacks, and phone. I told the vault support employee on duty that I wanted to review, mark, and prepare the drug evidence for transport to court. She asked me to sign in and write down the case file number. As I entered the cage vault, I noticed a man in a white shirt and tie standing with another support person. He wasn't someone I recognized from our division and had FBI headquarters written all over him. Strange, but none of my business. When I started looking for the Pakistani heroin, 2 more support employees entered the vault, walked over to the stranger without acknowledging me, and whispered something in his ear. Their behavior struck me as odd and alerting. An unpleasant feeling started to spread throughout my bodies. You've heard about police, I think you've heard the expression, the hair on the back of your neck, sixth sense, danger. I'm telling you, as a cop and as an agent, you recognize danger before it happens. Okay, you see a problem coming, you know something's coming. Okay, it's a sense that I'm telling you is accurate. I can't define it, but I know when something's going to go bad, and I know something's going to go bad here. The stranger turned to me and asked in an aggressive manner, "What are you looking for?" I didn't know him from Adam and hadn't bothered to introduce myself. So I responded, and I apologize for my language, ladies. I responded with my usual curt, "Who the blank are you?" He replied simply, "You need to go see your SAC, meaning the special agent in charge, or the big boss, the top guy in the entire office." It had the effect of a slap to the face. Staggered and pissed off, I asked myself, why is a complete stranger telling me to leave the evidence vault and go see the big boss? Then I noticed that one of the boxes he was examining had my case file number written on it. What the hell is going on, I asked myself. Why is he looking at the evidence in my case? Alarms sounded in my head. Rather than stand there and argue, I returned to the squad area to look for my supervisor, but he wasn't there. My mind racing 1,000 miles an hour, I went down Mahogany Row, where all executive management sat, and proceeded directly to the SAC's office, skipping 2 levels in the chain of command, my supervisor and the assistant special agent in charge. The FBI is a very militaristic organization. You only report to the next level above you, and I had now skipped 2 levels. That's how bad I thought something was. So I'm now going to see the head of the office. Our SAC, special agent in charge, was an outstanding leader who made a point of showing up at your desk on a regular basis and asking you what was going on with your various cases. He made it clear that if you worked hard, you had nothing to fear. On the other hand, if you were lazy, he would make your life miserable. He and I had an excellent working relationship. So upon entering his office, I started ranting that there was some guy from headquarters up in the evidence vault messing around with my evidence. I reminded the SAC that I had an important trial coming up, and I didn't need some pencil-pushing auditing some compliance issue when I had more important things to do. The SAC looked me dead in the eye and said, "Mike, the trial is the least of your worries." My heart skipped a beat. What are you talking about? He stared at me with steely eyes of a medieval executioner, causing a chill to course through my body. I'd never seen this side of him. "Mike," he said, "we have reason to believe the drug evidence is missing from the evidence vault. It's a very serious matter. An internal FBI investigation is underway. I want you to return to your squad area now. You're not to discuss this matter with anyone, including your wife, unless and until directed by me. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Dismissed. I felt like I was going to either faint or throw up. I had no idea what had happened, but the SAC had made it clear that there was a huge problem, and somehow I had ended up in the middle of it. I literally couldn't think straight. Fragments of thoughts passed through my head, and somehow, I don't remember how, I was back in the squad area. But since I couldn't talk to anyone, I didn't want to be there, so I hurried outside. All the while, I kept telling myself to calm down and try to think straight, but it was impossible. My blood pressure had shot so high that it felt like my head was about to explode. Am I a suspect, I asked myself? Does the SAC really think that after all the work I did to make the case, I stole the Pakistani heroin? To my rational mind, that didn't seem possible. But his words kept repeating in my head. The trial is the least of your worries. Clearly, he regarded me as a suspect. Why? Starting to panic, I got in my car and started driving aimlessly around the city. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before, and I didn't know what to do. I couldn't discuss the situation with other agents, and I didn't want to upset my wife and kids. How could I go home and say, "Hi, honey, you know that case I worked on for 2 years around the clock? Well, the evidence was stolen, and the FBI thinks I did it." In the days that followed, the pressure grew. FBI internal investigators read me my Miranda warnings and took my fingerprints. Incredibly, my own employer, the agency I had worked like a dog and risked my life for, was now accusing me of stealing almost $200 million in heroin and cocaine and reselling it on the street like a common dope dealer. How is this possible? Not only was my perfect life over, and the reputation I had worked so hard to achieve, that I had worked so hard to establish, was in the toilet. If I couldn't find a way to prove my innocence, there was a strong possibility I'd end up in federal prison hanging with some of the same drug dealers I'd put away. I was in the fight of my life, okay? That is not fiction. That is a true story. In 1994, I was accused of stealing $200 million from inside an FBI evidence vault, okay? And to this day, that upsets me to the point that when you serve in law enforcement, you don't make a lot of money, you all know that. But what you get is a reputation and your integrity. And to have that challenged, to have that temporarily destroyed, was just horrific, right? So that's how the book starts. I come out all right at the end, but for 3 months, I was the subject of a massive FBI criminal investigation. The FBI wanted to arrest me. They prepared an arrest warrant. The FBI wanted to search my house where my wife and my 3 young children lived, okay? The FBI followed me, all right? So some people say I might have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. Yeah, I do, okay? But I don't want my FBI career to be defined by that event. What that event did, is it made me constantly challenged to prove myself again and again to the FBI that they had made a mistake. So that happened only 7 years into my FBI career, and I use that as motivation going forward to make cases the rest of my career. I don't know if any of you have ever been arrested, or even worse, if you've ever been accused of something that you didn't do. It's a horrendous experience. And as a police officer and as an FBI agent, I never cut corners. I never locked anybody up that didn't deserve to get locked up. Okay, I did everything by the book. I did everything fair and square, the way I was taught. And to have the FBI turn on you in a minute's notice is just, I can't describe it other than horrific. All right, but that's not what I want the book to be about. So what you'll read as a result of that case, when I was finally exonerated, and again, how do you like this? I go into the FBI and I have to be interviewed like a subject. So I'm having my rights read to me. That's backwards because I'm supposed to be reading my rights to everybody else. Okay? They had to take what's called your major case prints. They take fingerprints, not only of your fingerprints, but of different parts of your hand to see what you may have grabbed. Okay, they're called major case prints. The FBI chose to do that with the door open in my office. So my fellow employees walked by, saw me giving my major case prints in the mugroom, and immediately I was about to be arrested, okay? I don't think I have to say it. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't have anything to do with it, okay? The agent that was eventually convicted of the crime stole the heroin from my case, stole the heroin from my Pakistani case, and he also stole cocaine from a different case I worked. So the only agent involved in both cases was me, okay? That's called being set up, all right? It worked out at the end. There's three chapters in the book related to that, but it kind of scarred me for the rest of my FBI career.
Did it blow the case?
I'm sorry?
Did it blow the case? Did it blow the case?
Did we close the case?
Did you blow the case because of what happened?
Did we blow the Pakistani case?
Yeah.
No, we actually took the real event. This is a good chapter, a good day. When that happened, we took the facts that the evidence was stolen from the FBI evidence vault, and we convinced the Pakistani defendant we had extradited to the United States to cooperate with us in another case as if he had been released from jail because of the theft, and we ended up making a second seizure based on that. So that's what I'm talking about, turning a horrible event around to something positive. But what that did for me at that point was I never trusted the FBI after that, and I'm sad to say that, but after what they did, I just couldn't get over the fact that they would think I did that. So I kind of became a little bit of a rebel, maybe, I don't know what you want to call it. But it's what drove me to work these other cases later. So what you'll read about in this case, about that event is about 3 of the chapters out of 20. So it's not the big story in the book, but what it did was make me work even harder. And I wanted to really throw it back in their face every time I made a case. So after this, I went undercover. I had worked undercover before this, but after this event, I went undercover time and time and time again. All right? I don't know what you know, sir. We're going to get to questions in a minute. Do you mind waiting 1 second? I'm right on time. You go first, too. If we start with questions, we're going to lose the rest. From this day forward, we made the case on that. We made another heroin case. So the first case, we seized 45 kilograms of heroin, which was a massive seizure. Because of that theft, in the second case we made, we then seized 50 kilos, even more. So in 2 cases, we seized $400 million worth of heroin, okay? And we didn't pay a penny for it, all right? And from these cases, that led into the rest of my undercover career, and I'll just go briefly through it. I worked against the mafia. Everybody knows what the mafia is, okay? Before 9/11, organized crime was the biggest criminal threat in America. So back in those days, before 9/11, the mob was our biggest threat. And I ended up working 3 cases, totaling about 10 years combined of working undercover with the mob. I basically spent every waking moment with them, sun up to sundown. So you read some stuff about the mob in here, you read some stuff about, we infiltrated the Outlaw motorcycle gang. I can't ride a bicycle, let alone a motorcycle, but there's ways to do it. And again, people would say, how can you, I don't look like a biker, I hope I don't look like a biker. I'm sorry?
No, you don't.
No, I don't. Okay? But just remember, there's no black and white people in the world, there's only green. People will do anything for money. So if you can convince them to deal with you over financial matters, you're in good shape. But you read about the mob, I did a case against the Russian mob, that was interesting. I had never done vodka shots at 8 a.m. in the morning until that case. All right, that doesn't make for a good rest of the day. All right, you don't want to be drinking vodka at 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, that was normal for them. That's the first thing they did when they woke up. All right, I went from the Russians into the Italians. We're picking off every ethnic group here we can find. We already did the Colombians. Okay, and I joke about that in a serious way. And again, I don't want to get into the current day politics of law enforcement and the FBI. Everybody knows what's going on in Washington these days. This book doesn't have one word of politics in it, okay? Street agents like me, our job is to make cases. We don't get involved in politics. So please don't ask me a question later about the current state of affairs, because I'm not going to answer you. So again, going through all these cases, 2007, I'm approaching the end of what I thought was the end of my career. We get information and we have an informant who has access to the Sinaloa cartel. For those of you not privy to the Sinaloa cartel, most of you have probably heard about Chapo Guzman, Shorty. He's on trial right now in New York City. All right, he was the world's most wanted fugitive at one time. We made a case against Chapo Guzman. Okay, we indicted Chapo Guzman out of the Boston Division in 2012. That's all in here. I'm going to go through and I'm going to get to your questions in 1 second. I'm just going to read you a couple other things, just so you don't think every day was a bad day. 99% of my career were good days. That one incident kind of got off track, but everything else was great. I told you I worked against the mob, the LCN, La Cosa Nostra. And I didn't know it. I don't speak any other languages, but I do speak mob, okay? And you tell me at the end of this paragraph if you understand mob talk, because here's a typical conversation. I'm Mikey. My name in this case was Irish Mike, okay? Mobster, hey Mikey, what's new? How they hanging? Listen, Mikey, I need to talk to you about those things. Them things that I need. Irish Mike, what things you talking about? Mobster, those things, not the other things. Those things I told you about. Irish Mike, those things, yeah, what do you need? Because I got those things and not the other things. Those the ones? Mobster, yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I need. You're a good guy, Mikey. How's your dog doing? Irish Mike, the dog's good, real good. You want to go get a sandwich? All right, that's a typical conversation. You spend hours and hours of time with these guys, and maybe 5 minutes you're collecting evidence, and this is the nonsense you put up with. Here's a little bit more serious mob conversation. Do you understand what a made man is? You've heard about a made man. In the LCN culture and the mafia, made man, it's a myth, but it's what everybody believes. You have to have killed somebody to become a made man. That's not true factually, but that's what the belief is. And if you lived around here, in 1989, there was a famous case where the FBI recorded a mafia initiation in Medford, Massachusetts. It's the only time the FBI ever recorded an actual introduction. One of the gentlemen here that I'm working against was at that ceremony, so he's a legit mobster. He's a real deal. But I'm being introduced to him for the first time by another mobster And we're sitting in a hotel room in Tampa, Florida, and I just want to go through quickly. Here's another mob conversation. Everybody probably recognizes the name Joe Pistone. You know who Joe Pistone is? Donnie Brasco, okay? You also know he recommended the book, okay? All right, you're gonna hear Joe Pistone referenced in this conversation. I'm obviously a friend of Joe Pistone's, but see what I do when I'm confronted with that information, all right? The bad guy's name is Natalillo. Natalillo, he, meaning the made guy, he may say okay, and they may work something out, and the Tampa mobster may get something worked out, because he will know, and they will know how to talk to each other. Even I don't know that, okay? So what he's saying is he's not a made man, but the guy that I'm being introduced is, so that guy's gonna be able to settle this dispute. Me, my head's spinning, Bobby. Natalillo, even I don't know all this. Me, that's between those two. Natalillo, there's things that I don't even know because there's things I can't say to him. Do you understand? If he's real, if he's a made man, I can't. There's things I can't say to him. Me, no, he's real, I'm telling you. If that's what I think that's what you'll find out. Natalillo, I've seen real cops that are real too. Me, he's gotta be good then. Natalillo, how about the ones right inside? Me, inside where? Natalillo, your organization. Why, you don't think there's none in it? Sure there is. Me, there's cops inside your place, all right? I'm talking to this gentleman, we're closer than this gentleman and I have a recorder on, and I have an FBI badge on my body, but there's none in his organization, okay? There's cops inside your place, Natalillo, not our place. We know there's none in ours because we know everybody in our circles, as he tells an FBI agent, okay? But there's other circles they get in. Look at Joe Pistone, what he did. Who's that? What he did to those guys in New York. They got $1 million bounty on his head to kill him. He's a federal agent. He went in. Was that a movie? Natalillo, it's a true story. Me, I didn't know that. Natalillo, that's a true story. Those are real people. That's a true story. Me, I didn't know that. I thought that was Hollywood. That was a premonition even before Hollywood. Natalillo, no, that's true. Me, now pay attention here. He got in with those guys, oh yeah. And they treated him like one of his own? Yeah, me. And nothing happened to him? Natalillo, well, they got him out before something happened. He testified and then they moved him. Changed his name, witness protection, the whole thing. Me, what would they have done if they found out? Natalillo, killed him. Me, who was he? Natalillo. There's $1 million bounty on his head. Me, oh, I saw that on HBO one night. I didn't know it was a real story. Oh yeah, it's a true story. Me, how could that happen? Natalillo. He portrayed himself on the street, just like a guy. All you need is one guy. So there's a mobster telling an FBI agent that if they figure out an FBI agent has infiltrated them, they'll kill them. We use that tape in about 4 or 5 different trials to explain the mindset of the LCN. So the reason I try to invoke a little humor as we talk here, what we do is very serious, obvious. You gotta have a release valve, you gotta have some humor, but these guys are dead serious, they'll kill you, okay? Agents have been killed doing this type of work, all right? We're getting ready to wrap it up here. Anybody know why the name of the book is Ghost? Any idea? All right. FBI agent what?
That had been killed?
Nope.
Slipping in and out like a ghost.
You're getting there. I'm going to tell you why. It took me, the book is 305 pages, and I came up with the title on page 305. I'm serious. I'm going to read you the last little piece, and then we're going to get to the questions. This is in the final chapter as my career has come to a close. I was retiring and I got some email. I'm going to start with one that you'll kind of pick up on pretty quick. A senior male agent said in an email, Wilfred. He calls me Wilfred because I resemble the TV character in Pitchman, Wilfred Brimley. For those of you who remember him. All right, Quaker Oats. You will always be one of the very few people on this job that I truly respect, admire, and have tried to emulate. One of the greatest things you taught me was not to give a blank what anybody else thinks if you know what you are doing is the right thing. Words like that from colleagues I respect mean more to me than any awards. In 2007, my division selected me as the recipient of their highest award. It was special because it was given to me by my peers, fellow agents who work beside me every day. The SAC who presented it to me described me as an agent who continually goes into the belly of the beast against the worst of the worst. I stood at the podium and addressed my fellow agents, my wife and daughter in the audience. My oldest son was overseas with the Marines, and my youngest son was away in college, and said, I work in a specialty area within the FBI, which by its very nature is secretive and whose success is recognized by the ability to remain unrecognized as an FBI agent. I'm not comfortable being recognized. I much prefer to remain a ghost, a shadow hiding in the background. Okay? And that's how I ended my career. And now I'm front and center at the Tewksbury Public Library and all over the place. All right?